You're listening to the Chopped Podcast, episode number 28. Yeah, you betcha. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. Thanks for joining me today for the 28th episode of the Chopped Podcast. This is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. Each week I'm sharing thoughts, stories, interviews, everything related to food blogging so that we can all learn together about what works with food blogging and maybe even a little bit about what doesn't. Today's guest is Brandon Matzek of the site Kitchen Confidence. Brandon and I are talking about a lot of things today, but mostly we're spending a lot of time talking about this concept of the blogger as teacher. And I think that's because Brandon has a real engaging model on his site, which is, reaching out to his audience, helping them to get more confidence in the kitchen. And the way he does that is through teaching them some, really cool cooking techniques. And I thought that was kind of an interesting concept because I know that I talked about this with Lindsay Ostrom of the site Pinch of Yum back in episode 2. And she talked about how, she was a teacher and now she's doing the food blog entirely, as her job. And so she was talking about the concepts that she learned about being a teacher and how those helped her as a food blogger. And I think that's something that, we might want to talk about a little bit more. And whether, you have a background in teaching or don't, or maybe you have some natural teaching skills, either way, I think this idea of a food blogger as teacher is kind of interesting. And I really liked some of the insights that Brandon shared about that. One quick thing before the interview. Today's post is sponsored by Best Food Facts. From information on the latest research topics to how long you cook your veggies and everything in between, Best Food Facts connects you with information on all things food, straight from university experts. Head over to bestfoodfacts.org to learn more. Okay, so I've got kind of a weird question for you guys. Do you believe in ghosts? I don't, but I don't know. Something happened yesterday. I met a friend for lunch at Chipotle's. Don't you love that place? I do. And one of the to-go bags had a brief essay written by Amy Tan printed on it. And Amy Tan is the author of The Joy Luck Club and The Bonesetter's Daughter and a bunch of other books. And I really like her writing. So I was immediately drawn to reading this bag. And I kind of tucked it away and took it home and waited till I got home to read it. But I won't read the whole thing to you now, but here's an excerpt of Amy Tan's essay that's written on this or printed on this Chipotle bag. She's talking about how many people do and don't believe in ghosts, and she describes how even her own husband is one of the 58% of people who don't believe in ghosts. And then one day, he hears one whistling behind him, and this is what she says. I bet many of the 58% have never heard of a whistling ghost. They think ghosts are merely grief inflated by wishful thinking. Would they change their minds if the ghost named his murderer? One of mine did that, and the murderer was sentenced to life in prison. He also told me I would one day be a writer. And when I read that, I had this moment where I sure wished that I believed in ghosts because, wouldn't it be cool to have some sort of being in your life telling you you can do this? And not just telling you you can do this, but telling you you will do this. So that's my question to you guys today. Do you believe in ghosts? I'd love to hear your feedback. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the whole quote on my Chopped Instagram page, and I would love to hear your feedback. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of this. Is this too woo-woo for you? Or do you find this really interesting? Or is it not rational enough? I don't know. I'm just curious to hear what you think. Okay, you guys, Chopped Conference is right around the corner, and I am so excited about it. If you have this dream of going to a food blogging conference that can make a difference in your life, I want you to seriously consider coming to Chopped Conference. I've talked to so many food bloggers who have attended a food blogging conference and left in tears. And in fact, I might have been one of those people myself at some point, and I think I actually contemplated never going to a food blogging conference again because it just felt terrible to me when I went. But that's the beauty of building something yourself. You can create it the way you want it to be. It's like that quote I shared with you guys early on in the podcast, back in episode 1 or 2, I think. The quote was, "This is your world, shape it or someone else will." So what I did was to shape my own food blogging conference. That's Chopped Conference. Of course, there's a lot of serious learning that goes on, but more than anything, you'll love the energy in the room. First, it's held in this super urban, kind of chic downtown Kansas City event place. There's a huge garage door on one of the walls, and if the weather's right, we'll open up those doors, and you'll be listening to people like Matt Armendariz speaking about authenticity and photography with lots of light and maybe even a sweet breeze coming around. That's kind of cool. And then there's also all these awesome Kansas City food bloggers who are going to be there, like Kristen Doyle of Dine and Dish, Ali Ebright of Gimme Some Oven, Bev Widener of Bev Cooks, and Catherine Taylor of Cookie and Kate. They're actually going to be hosting the Thursday night reception, so that's going to be great. Chopped Conference started as a dream to create a food blogging conference that makes a difference. I want you to experience that for yourself, so come join us this year on October 15th to the 16th. You can go to choppedcon.com and buy your ticket today. So let's go straight to that interview. Today's intro shout out is to Rachel Connors of the site Bakerita blog. Rachel says she was listening to the Chopped podcast while waiting for thunderstorms, drinking coffee, and catching up on pinning. Talk about a great multitasking day. I love it. So what are you doing while listening to the Chopped podcast? Send me a shout out on Twitter or Instagram using hashtag ChoppedCon, and maybe I'll feature you and your site in an upcoming episode. But for today, in honor of Rachel, everyone get out your favorite coffee mug. You might even want to have your umbrella handy, and then put on your headphones and let's talk about all things food blogging and so much more. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have Brandon Matzek of Kitchen Confidence on the show today. Brandon, welcome to the Chopped podcast.
Hey everybody.
Brandon, I'm so glad that you're here to talk with us today. We have so much to talk about. I saw on your site that you're celebrating 5 years as a blogger, and I want to talk with you about that and everything else. But first, yay! Let's take a step back, and can you describe for everybody why you started your blog, Kitchen Confidence?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So back in 2010, I had gotten my first DSLR camera, and I have always loved to cook. I grew up in a family that really enjoyed and valued cooking, half Italian, half Eastern European, but mainly the Italian side of my family was where all the amazing cooks were. So I grew up in the kitchen, helping out, snapping green beans, peeling potatoes, things like that. And as I grew up, I really carried that along with me. And I've always been very food focused. It's actually kind of a joke about how food obsessed I am. So back in 2010, I was already cooking a lot, and then I got my camera, and I remember I was taking photos of asparagus and strawberries and leeks and things like that. And I just loved the photos, and I loved sharing them. And I got some really good feedback from my Facebook friends at the time. And at one point I thought, let me make this official. Let me, start documenting my adventures in the kitchen, my recipes, and still today it's very photography focused. So the cooking and the photography really go hand in hand.
Oh, absolutely, because, we eat with our eyes. So when something looks good, it makes you actually want to try that recipe.
I know that's how I like to eat, and those are the recipes I love to look at.
Well, you're in San Diego, right?
Yes.
So I imagine your experience at the grocery store is a little different than mine, because when I go buy a leek and I take it to the front, there's oftentimes someone at the counter going, "What's that?"
Yeah, we do have definitely a big culture here of the seasons and seasonal produce, and I love shopping at farmers markets. Oh, yeah. Or there's actually a produce wholesaler here in San Diego called Specialty Produce, and I've been going to that location for over 3 years now, and it's just an amazing source of all different types of seasonal produce.
And organic and things like that.
Yeah, they have regular, kind of conventional produce, and then they also have organic, and then they also have a whole cooler filled with produce stocked from farms around San Diego.
Well, I think it's interesting that you tell this story about, how you grew up and your family was cooking, because I have some similar memories, but my memories are mostly of these adults that are always like, "Oh, stop, I can do this faster by myself," so not necessarily sharing it with me, but then that kind of caused me to want to learn how to cook on my own. But I like your story better, this whole family experience where people are sharing, how to do all this stuff.
Well, a couple funny points is one, I never really got to do like the top priority tasks. I wasn't quite making pizzas or making the homemade tomato sauce or stuffing the shells with the filling. I was doing more of the prep work.
Yes, I got you.
And then I remember several times throughout my kind of high school years, I would want my mother to write down all of her recipes.
Yeah.
And the thing was there were no recipes to write down. So a
Yeah.
lot of what I learned is just in my mind. And from time to time, I have to check in with the family to, remember how to do something.
Isn't that a challenging thing about food blogging then? I have the same problem. Like my mom just kind of wings it and will taste it and then that's how she knows like this is the perfect potato salad because of this and or she'll taste it and like, oh, it needs more vinegar or it needs more this. And it's like how do how do you then take that and turn that into a recipe to put on your site?
Yeah, that is a challenge with the family recipes. It's also a challenge with the restaurant recipes. So I work a lot with restaurants around San Diego, and sometimes I'll try to get a cocktail or some sort of food recipe from the chef, and translating a chef recipe into one that home cooks can make requires a good amount of testing and follow up and research.
Well, and yeah, probably simplifying too, right? Because sometimes, like, you could have this huge long list of ingredients, and I don't know. Sometimes I try to work on recipes for my readers so that they're not as complicated.
Yes.
Pared down steps maybe, or things like that.
Yeah, or finding more accessible ingredients,
Yeah.
or how can you do something where they might have a specific piece of equipment that home cooks might not have. So yeah, there is definitely some challenges with restaurant recipes.
So you started your blog in 2010, and it's been 5 years. Are there some things about food blogging that you've discovered that you just really love?
Yeah, I've always loved the photography, which I've mentioned
Hmm.
before, but really getting down to the details and if you slice a cucumber a certain way and you see the pattern of the seeds in the middle of the cucumber, and that just strikes me as something that's beautiful. And so really through cooking, kind of discovering the beauty of not just the finished dish, but the process of cooking, and then seeing how I can photograph all that and to tell a cohesive story. So I really do love that portion of food blogging. Recently, over the past couple of years, I've really gotten into more of the networking element as
Mm-hmm.
well. And I just love connecting with other like-minded foodies
Yeah.
through my blog. And that's, in the internets and the interwebs, but also here in San Diego. You'd be amazed at the
Yeah.
conversations that can just get struck up over food or over blogging, and so I love the networking, the people element as well.
Oh, that's great. And I think there's so much to be. I mean, I don't know. There's something about sharing food with people that just takes it to another level.
Yeah, and that's a big reason why I do what I do is over the years I would cook something and you share it, and that look on people's faces when they just kind of their eyes light up and they
Yeah.
they go like
Yeah.
that. And I love that in real life. I love that moment, and if I can share that through my blog and get other home cooks to experience that kind of wow yum moment, then that makes me really happy.
That's so great. And has it been like a gradual experience for you being a food blogger, or do you feel like, you had some point in time where things just really took off?
It has been fairly gradual, I'd have to say. Um, because my blog has always been had a strong photography focus, that's helped. That's something that really helps get your content out. It's going to get featured on Food Gawker. It's going
Yeah.
to get shared on Facebook. It's going to get picked up by various editors who then share it elsewhere. So
Hmm.
that, I kind of hit the ground running in that area. I definitely have to say there's other elements that have been, little more gradual, a little more slower. Switching up promotional avenues. Finding all the new websites that are out there. Yumly was a big one this year that I think I was a little behind the curve on that. And all of a sudden I saw traffic coming in from Yumly and I'm thinking, gosh, why am I not active here? So there's some things that come slowly where others have been, a steady process. In terms of photography, I think there was actually a bit of an aha moment. I did a photography course with Matt Armendariz.
Yes.
Yeah, back in I think 2011.
Uh-huh.
And it was just a one day course. I drove up to Long Beach, and it was fantastic. And there were just some photography principles, some general ones that I was not following or was not keeping in mind. That after that course, I just it really clicked.
Now, I need everybody to know that this was not a plug because Matt is actually coming to my conference in October, the Chopped conference, and he's going to be doing a workshop on photography. So I really had no idea that you did that, but I'm really pleased to hear that it was a great program for you to be in.
Yeah, it was a wonderful experience. So I think you guys will definitely love him and benefit from all of his knowledge.
That's great. So, but do you feel like that when that photography clicked for you, is that when things with your blog started to click as well?
It certainly helped.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly helped. I mean, I was still doing okay before that. I feel like I have a bit of an eye for composition, which is something that I've always had even before blogging. And so that's something that's very important. Even if you're good at photography, you also have the composition portion.
Yes, it's huge.
So yeah, there's just various things over the year, various learnings. This year in particular, I've been toying around with actually hiring people to help out.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, so that's something new.
I think that's really important. I've said this several times on this podcast that I think as food bloggers, we have a tendency to want to do everything ourselves, and I think that it's risky business. It can certainly lead to burnout really quickly if you're not careful.
Yes, I agree with that. And this year I'm just testing out, getting various help with certain areas that I'm not, an expert or areas that need improvement. Bringing people in and then seeing if there's a good return on investment.
Yeah, that's really great. So in this 5 years, have you also discovered some things about food blogging that you don't like so much? Or anything you can talk about?
I'll have to say, out of all the different, food blogging encompasses a lot of different disciplines. And I'd have to say the one that challenges me the most is the writing portion. And I think I kind of have, grammar usually down. My boyfriend's the proofreader. And I think I'm good at describing, in a clear and concise way. But I always look at creative writers and I think, God, why can I not be that creative? And so I have to say, it's not that I don't like the writing, because I do like, describing food.
Yeah.
But I think that's definitely a challenging area. And another thing that I've learned is that you really have to be active everywhere. So all the various different social media platforms. And for me, also working a full-time job, that can be really challenging. So that's to tie it back in, I'm just trying to hire some people to help me with social media and helping to make sure I continue to get my work out there.
Yeah, it can get really time consuming being involved in all these social media platforms.
Yeah. So that's a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I love your About page, Brandon, and the way that you talk about your goal was to help people grow confidence in the kitchen. And that's where I think you probably got the name of your site, right? Kitchen Confidence?
Yeah. And I can give you a little kind of funny backstory about that.
I love that.
Yeah. So uh, here in San Diego, I've helped a lot of my friends learn to cook, and this was many years ago, and I was staying with a friend, and we were going to cook dinner one evening, and I came home and she had chopped up a sweet potato, and it was just hacked up. Like I'm thinking to myself, like what sort of like fractions did you have in mind when you were kind of cutting this up? And so we had a good laugh about that. But that was kind of an aha moment where for me, I know that when you chop up a sweet potato in even pieces, it's going to cook evenly, so that you don't have bits that are overcooked and some that are undercooked. And that's something that I've naturally learned from watching the Food Network and following my family. But other people don't know that. Other friends who are amazed at how I would chop an onion, where for me that's standard knowledge. And so over the years, I helped a lot of my friends kind of learn to cook and explaining these basics. And now that one friend who had that crazy chopped sweet potato, she's awesome. She's a really good
Wow.
home cook, and she loves exploring her own recipes. She loves the Pioneer Woman. So,
That's
so
gotta feel great then that spawned this budding cook.
yeah, well, at least I mean, at least I helped her.
Encourage, yes.
Encouraged. I helped her out a little bit, and I know now she's an awesome cook, and there's several stories like that of just me helping my friends, and so I thought I could do the same with others.
Yeah, and then on a larger scale as well, right?
Yeah, on a larger scale. And I'm not afraid to tackle difficult recipes. I kind of love what I call them, like food projects. I don't mind spending a lot of time in the kitchen,
Yeah.
and so I like explaining those recipes as well to um, hopefully get people to understand that you can do it and that you can have a really spectacular final result.
Oh, that's cool. And hopefully, like you say, that does help your readers grow in confidence, which seems like one of your goals. So that's
Yeah.
cool. I like this goal, this concept of blogger as teacher, and I'm just curious if you ever find like are there some tricks so that you don't come across as condescending or maybe even pedantic to your audience? Do you have any tricks for things like that?
Well, you have to know your audience. So if you know that your audience is very skilled, then you may not want to explain, all the various smaller details.
Hmm.
Or if you think your audience is just starting out and you really want to get detailed, don't be afraid to type out, detailed instructions.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be short. People aren't going to check out. I think in the end, they would rather have more information than less. More information and, accompanying food photos.
Right.
I think, for me, I don't photograph every single step of my recipe. But I do like to include some process shots. So I know that does help in teaching. And the more photos you can include, I know that is really helpful. But yeah, so just be very detailed.
Being detailed is important. Like I guess if you were saying knowing your audience and then imagining from their perspective how would they want to go about doing this recipe.
Yeah, yeah. So know your audience, and then that should help you decide for what kind of level of detail you think you need. Um,
I guess you could also go based on the questions that you're getting about previous recipes. Would that be helpful as well?
yeah, that's also a good barometer in terms of what you want to answer. Also, don't be afraid to edit a past recipe if you think you can clarify even more. So if you post a recipe and you find that you're getting a lot of the same question, just make a little note to help clarify for future readers.
Yes. I think this whole concept is so great because I've seen a lot of people say that, really you want to become the go-to source for your audience about your topic. And so trying to think of your blog and you as the teacher of some of these things, I think could be a great opportunity for you to provide things, not just like this recipe, but like you were saying, how to chop up a sweet potato. I mean, I've seen some actual blogs that have short demonstrations on certain kind of cutting techniques and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes if I get questions in, first point, you want to try to answer every single question that comes in on your blog
Right.
in terms of cooking. And then if the content's not living on my blog already, I will happily link out to someone else's tutorial, because in the end you want to be the trusted resource for people where they feel like they can come back and get answers, whether that's on your blog or it's on someone else's blog.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, you just want to be a trusted knowledge
Yeah.
resource.
Yeah, that's very cool. So, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, Brandon, is you have been at this for 5 years now, and I'm just curious, do you ever struggle with like keeping it fresh or maintaining the creativity of what you do on your blog over these years?
That's a great question. I
Thank you.
find I find that kind of passion and creativity is they go hand in hand, and so I've discovered over the years that this is something I'm really passionate about, and I love doing it, and so that helps me it helps to keep me going, and in terms of kind of keeping it fresh and keeping it creative, I am always looking for sources of inspiration. So I have, probably 10 to 15 too many cookbooks on my shelves right
Yeah. I know the feeling, yeah.
Yeah, so I love getting new cookbooks in and just reading the stories and looking at the recipes. I subscribe to Bon Appetit and Food and Wine, and they're really great sources of inspiration. I have my Feedly is just packed with blogs that I'm looking at every single day, and then I try to stay active in the San Diego restaurant community to see what's going on here. What are our top chefs doing here? What are the new restaurants putting out? And and I mean, then of course, Food Network and Cooking Channel are on about half the time. I can't keep them on all the time, but I do have them on a lot. And also while driving to work, I also listen to podcasts.
Ah, cool.
So literally, a good portion of my day is spent kind of with food.
Do you have some favorite foodie podcasts that you listen to?
I really love Good Food,
Okay.
which is out of LA, and America's Test Kitchen,
Oh, yeah.
Splendid Table, Spilled Milk, the Chop Podcast.
Aha, thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, and This American Life. I just started, and that's not foodie related, but
It's a
I
great.
just started listening to that when Serial came out.
Yes.
I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
So the point of all of this is that when you surround yourself with so much inspiration, and by the way, reading is also the best inspiration for writing. I try to read when I can. Books. Like, I mean, I'm always reading blogs, but and magazines, but actual books. So surrounding yourself with all of that inspiration helps to keep my creativity going. And I almost have my culinary to-do list is almost too long. Like, I don't have time to get through everything.
That's how I feel too. Like I have so many recipes I want to do, but each recipe takes quite a bit of time, and so there's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you have to test it and then have to find the time to photograph it, and so yeah, it's for me it's almost like there's too much. Even 5 years 5 years later, I still feel like that.
Well, I was going to tell you, if you're talking about reading, one of my favorite books is called Dancing in the Streets. Do you know this book by Barbara Einreich?
I'm not familiar.
Well, it's a great book. It's really based on this. She's an anthropologist, so the whole concept is the history of. She has some term for it, but it's basically group dancing amongst humans or group celebrations, and part of that is food. And so there's some. Oh, she's a great writer, and she has wonderful stories, and they're of ancient communities, and it's a really great book. You will love
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the reading doesn't have to be, for me, it doesn't have to be food related, just reading any book
Yeah.
really helps to see how they do introductions, how they do
Hmm.
conclusions, how they describe things, their sentence structure. So
Yeah, the adjectives they use to describe certain things, I think, can be really exciting, and yeah, like it gives you a different way to present even the things that you're talking about on your site.
yeah,
That's really cool. And you do all this as you have a full-time job as well. How do you do it all?
yes. So I do have a full-time job that is anywhere from 40 to 60 hours a
Oh my
week.
gosh, that's a lot.
Usually 40. I don't want to, make it seem too crazy. It's usually 40 hours a week. But I am in marketing, and from time to time, we have grand openings or special events or big programs. And during those time periods, the workload definitely goes up.
But marketing though, so you might have some insights on some good marketing strategies then, huh?
Yes.
That's good.
So, you know, both jobs, well, the blog's not really a job, but the blog for me is a really satisfying creative project.
I
uh,
see. Yeah, that's very important.
but the two of them complement each other very well. And I enjoy my full time work as well.
That's great. I think
So,
it sounds very symbiotic that you guys, you can draw from one and share it with the other kind of thing.
yeah, and that helps me. Like for example, I can if I have a good learning while I'm trying to figure something out for my blog, I can potentially apply that to my full time job. So there's some nice synergy between the two.
Ah, that's very cool. Really good. I noticed that you also share resources on your blog for food bloggers.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you have tips for people who are just starting out or maybe they're, relatively new to food blogging. Do you have some favorite tips you love to share with people about, how to start your blog and grow your audience?
Yeah, so I'll have to say my biggest tip, and I do mention this on that resource page, is that you just need to start doing. And I think for a lot of people, they might not, launch a blog, or they might not do X, Y, and Z because they're waiting for the right time, or they're waiting for it to be perfect, and then they launch. And what ends up happening is you never end up doing anything. So my big piece of advice is just step by step, start doing something, and then work it out as you go along. Get your website up and running and start posting, see how people are reacting, and then you can adjust from there. So that's my big piece of advice. If you're balancing that with while working a full-time job, then you really need to be organized with your time and with your activities. Make sure you know, come up with processes that allow you to kind of get everything done. I'm very process focused. I do things in batches, and I have to-do lists and task lists, and that helps me keep my professional, personal blogging, all my lives in order. And one, yeah, just get started, be organized, and then have fun and enjoy it. And if you find that you're not enjoying it, then it's okay to try something else.
It may be a sign. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I for the longest time after when Project Runway was really big, I think I had Sewing for Dummies book, and I had a sketch
You were
pad.
ready, huh?
I was like so ready, and then at some point I was like, you know what, this is not for me. Um,
I love it.
so so yeah, and then just set up that pool of inspiration. So I mentioned many of the sources that I use, but get out there, get some find some blogs that you really like, follow them, see what they're doing, and set up that source of inspiration so that you can keep it going.
I like that, Brandon. I think what I'm hearing you say is like take stock. If you're finding that you're struggling more than you're enjoying it, it may be that it's time to cut your losses and be done with it. Or sometimes I like to think too that there may be something that you're doing that can use some adjusting. So, for example, from my own personal experience, I find that when I'm not liking blogging as much is usually when I'm comparing myself to others more than I am trying to carve my own path. I don't
Hmm.
know if that makes sense or not, but
Yeah.
if I kind of let myself just, I don't know, take a deep breath and like rattle my head around a little bit and just go, okay, what am I shooting for here? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to reach my audience, and maybe I just want to talk to them the way I want to, and not worry so much about how everybody else is going to think about it, you know?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that's a great point about self-evaluation and looking at what I like to call like the pain points. and,
Yeah.
and if everything is a pain point, then that's when you might want to pursue something else. But if
Yes.
if there's certain aspects that you find are difficult, um, then yeah, either look at changing it, getting a new perspective, or um, to bring back what I mentioned before, or potentially, if you've got the budget, hire someone. So if you're not good at writing, but you love the photography, you might want to try to find someone to partner with who can help you with writing. So if there are aspects of food blogging that you really love, but you don't love everything, then look at doing something collaborative or look at hiring someone.
Oh, that's a great point because I mean, I think how often do we expect ourselves to just like, instantly have these skills that maybe somebody else has spent years developing? So why not hire that person to help you?
Yeah, and there are people who really, they're really good writers or they're really good photographers.
SEO is another one that comes to mind. If that's something that you struggle with, hire somebody to help you with that.
Yeah, everything on the back end. When I first launched Kitchen Confidence, I had designed my own theme with
Yes.
like Dreamweaver. And 2 years later, something really bad, went wrong on the back end. And by that time, I had lost all of that knowledge because I wasn't using it.
Oh,
And at that point, I decided to switch themes to something that was supported, and but it was almost like silly for me to, you think you have to do everything,
yeah.
but just if you're not good at something, don't be afraid to hire someone or pay for a service or pay for a theme. Don't struggle through it
Yeah.
because that struggle might eventually lead to you burning out or to you not launching something or to you not diving in. So
Yeah.
just evaluate and see what you don't like and then assess from there.
That is great advice, Brandon. I think it's so important for people to stay focused on their, like I like to refer to it as their higher energy, like whatever gives you the most,
Oh,
excitement and help the economy out by hiring somebody to do the other things that you don't like so much and don't waste your energy there.
yeah.
Or there's ways to get around it if you don't have the budget to hire someone. If there's some bartering that you can do, maybe you've got something that you do really well that you could do for somebody else, and there's ways around those kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, photography is a big one. So if
Yeah,
you're a good photographer, then a lot of people are looking for really good photos. So use that to your advantage.
that's right. Well, this has been really great, Brandon. I've really enjoyed talking with you. Is there anything exciting coming up for you that you can talk about?
Um, Not yet.
Okay.
but there might be something exciting coming up in September. I did recently just get back from Europe,
Wow.
which is my first time in Europe since 2004. And I was in Sweden, and so it was Gothenburg and Stockholm and Copenhagen and Amsterdam. And so it was really awesome, and it was really inspiring.
Wow, it sounds great. Well, we'll have to stay tuned to find out what your next news is later then, huh?
Yeah, so the September news I should be announcing soon.
Oh, can't wait.
So it might be another fun trip.
Great. Okay, so a few fun, quick questions here at the end of the interview.
Okay.
What's one food item you can't live without?
Um, oh, that was a good question. I'd have to say this may be a little cliche, but I'd have to say butter.
Okay. Actually, you're the first one to answer butter so far.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yes. We've had olive oil and salt, a lot of salt.
Yeah, well, yeah, salt. I was actually olive oil was in mine, but I realized recently I've been using butter a lot more than olive oil.
Really?
So I do love my butter, and I love salt as well. Salt is indispensable.
How about salted butter?
And, I do not use that.
Okay.
So no salted butter, but
Is this mostly for baked goods, or do you use it in other cooking, like over vegetables, or what?
yeah. So I like to use it for baking, for making sauces, or I actually put a little butter in my morning coffee.
I've heard about that. They call that rocket coffee or something like that.
Actually, it's called bulletproof coffee.
Bulletproof.
And I'm not actually bulletproof is kind of hardcore. It's like a big it's like a lot of coffee, a half a stick of butter, I think some like coconut oil. Yeah,
In
it's
one
really,
cup of coffee?
yeah, it's all that in the coffee, and it's actually supposed to be more of like a meal replacement. Like you have that for breakfast.
Oh my God.
Um,
How many calories would be in that? That's a lot.
yeah, it's a lot.
Wow.
But for me, I just rather than using like cream and sugar, I just kind of put a little slice of butter in, and it rounds everything out.
Okay, that's great. Okay, what's the favorite app on your phone?
Um, Gosh, I'm obsessed with my smartphone, and it's tough to pick a favorite. I do love, in terms of social media, I love Instagram.
Yes.
And I,
You have a great Instagram account, by the way.
oh, thank you. And I edit my photos with VSCO.
Oh, yes, that's a good one too.
So I find that I'm in VSCO a lot. Gosh, so many different ones. I guess the only other one I'll mention that's really been pretty, I would say, life changing is YNAB, which is you need a budget. And
Why nab?
yeah, if you are in need of a budget, which several years ago I found myself not budgeting very well. It's been so good. So and it's a desktop application as well, but the app syncs with the desktop application, so it's a little finance one.
Does it sync also with your bank account or anything like that?
It doesn't sync with your bank account because it almost forces you to enter in every transaction. I know I'm getting a little geeky right here, but yeah, it forces you to enter in every kind of financial transaction, which that process in itself helps you to be better with your money.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, just the fact of writing it down or whatever. Yeah, that would make a big difference.
Yeah, logging it, considering it. So
Oh, that's that. To me, that can be just like calories. It's like, you can easily spend or eat a lot.
yeah.
Okay, Brandon, you don't sound like you have very much time, but I'm going to ask you, do you have any time for TV? And if so, what do you watch?
Um, I'd have to say mainly it's like two categories. It's like Food Network, Cooking Channel,
Yes.
or it's HBO series.
Do you have a favorite HBO series?
Oh, that's so tough. I do love Game of Thrones,
Okay.
and that's actually what I'm reading right now as well.
Ah, cool.
Very enlightening, lots of additional details.
I bet. The books are always better, yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, Game of Thrones.
I think we're watching like True Detective right now. Isn't that an HBO show?
That is HBO. My boyfriend's currently watching that. He's big on TV, so he I'll kind of wander in and out and catch various things.
Yeah.
But yeah, HBO or Food Network.
Those are good ones. Okay, great. Okay, one last question: coffee or tea?
Oh, I'm a coffee drinker.
Your coffee all the way, huh?
Yeah, I love coffee. I worked at right when I moved to San Diego in 2004. I worked at Starbucks for 3 months, and I had applied to Starbucks without ever tasting a coffee drink. I just loved the smell of it.
I do too. I don't drink coffee, but I love the smell. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I remember the first day, after the interview, I ordered a frappuccino because I didn't want to get too crazy. And I was driving home and I took a sip, and as I was drinking it, my hands like started shaking
From the caffeine?
from the caffeine.
Oh my gosh.
But after that, it was like
You've been desensitized now.
I've been desensitized, but I've loved it ever since.
Wow. You like that shaky feeling, huh? I love it. That's a great story. Okay, Brandon, how can people find you online?
Okay, so you can visit me on my blog, which is kitchenconfidence.com.
With a K. Confidence with a K.
Confidence is spelled with a K. And then you can find me on Instagram at @Brandiego. So that's like Brandon plus San Diego.
I love it.
And that's where I am on Twitter as well. But I'm mainly active on Instagram.
That's great. And we can always go to your site and find the other social media profiles or platforms that you're on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Brandon, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I had a great time.
Thank you. This has been a pleasure.
Thanks to Brandon Matzek for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. If you were out running around and couldn't write down something important, don't worry, we took the notes for you. Just head on over to choppedcon.com where I put up links for each show, including the stuff we talked about today and more information about our guests. I hope you're loving the Chopped Podcast. If so, it would mean the world to me if you'd head over to iTunes or Stitcher and give it a review. Also, you can spread the word about the Chopped Podcast using @ChoppedCon on Twitter or Instagram, or even Facebook. Today's show was sponsored by Best Food Facts. Head over to bestfoodfacts.org to learn the latest on all things food. You inspire me, so I hope today's show is helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great week.